The Buddha fruit is certainly the most used fruit in Blox fruits, being one of the most helpful tools for many tasks such as grinding NPCs or fighting other players, and over the years have been through some many changes. In today's video we will see the history of the Buddha fruit, why it's always used so often, and learn some interesting facts about it. Without further ado, let's begin the full history of the Buddha fruit. Its journey begins on the 16th of January 2019 when Blox fruits first got released. The game was originally called Blox Peace and there were 4 main types of damage dealers: fighting styles, swords, guns, and of course, fruits. There were only 12 fruits when the game first came out compared to the 39 fruits we have today. The fruits that existed on release were Bomb, Spike, Chop, Smoke, Rubber, Flame, Ice, Dark, Light, Magma, Quake, and Buddha. It was actually the most expensive fruit at the time and was one of only 2 fruits with a legendary rarity. The other fruit with the legendary rarity at the time was the Quake fruit. As you know, each fruit gives you different abilities with the cost of you not being able to swim. As for Buddha's abilities, you turn into a giant yellow Buddha and do various light attacks. It cost 1.2 million belly, 1,650 Robux for the permanent version, and had a 5% chance to be on stock from the Blox Fruits dealer and Blox Fruits gacha. If you don't know, all the fruit model have changed 3 times, and since Buddha released when the game released, it would have 3 different fruit models with each model looking better over the years. This is what Buddha looked like when it first came out and was originally called Human Buddha. Next, let's see its Mova set of attacks. Its Z move, requiring 1 mastery, was Transform. It would transform the player into a massive yellow version of themselves, becoming 3 times as big, 5 times more each than a regular player, and had an yellow aura around it and has a 40% damage reduction. The more each also meant you could use your fighting style and sword to attack enemies with much more range. Maybe a bit too much range. The X move, also requiring 1 mastery, was Impact. Using this move makes a large explosion on the ground that has decent range, but nothing else was really good about it. It did mediocre damage and had a long start up. You also had to be transformed to use this move, as well as having to be transformed to using any other move of Buddha. The Buddha leap was the C move and required 100 mastery. You leaped in the air, landing shortly after that did damage. It was good for mobility but nothing else, and had a 1-second end lag. The V move was called Buddha Explosion, requiring 200 mastery. When used, your body would cause a giant explosion around yourself. It did do pretty good damage and large AoE, but it was slow and also had end lag. Overall, the set of attacks Buddha had wasn't very good. The transform was amazing, being used for almost everything, while the other moves ranged from average to bad and barely anyone used them. Most Buddha users just used the transform for its damage reduction and range increase of other damage dealers like swords and fighting styles. In terms of usage by players, it was hard to get since it was the most expensive fruit at the time, but it was pretty good. On the 16th of June 2019, Update 2 came out with new fruits, a new island, new fighting style, swords, guns, and of course balance changes. As for Buddha, the only change it had is that you could now use hats during transformation. Update 3 and 3.5 didn't add anything to Buddha, so on the 7th of July 2019 when Update 4 came out, it got an indirect nerf. It was definitely noticeable, but it wasn't too impactful. The New World Update, the biggest update in Blox fruits yet, released on the 24th of November 2019. A lot of fruit models got reworked in this update too. Update 9, the anti-copyright update. This update is focusing on renaming or modifying stuff in the game to make it resemble less of One Piece. Stuff like being renamed from Blox Peace to Blox Fruits, changing the visuals of certain weapons, and changing names of certain fruits. It also added the dough fruit, which I'll talk about in another video. On the 10th of July 2020, probably the biggest update for Buddha in its history, raids. Raids allow you to awaken a certain fruit by beating enemies on islands. When you beat a raid, you have an option to awaken a fruit's move for fragments. Awakened moves make the original moves stronger and better. To do a raid, you either had to pay $100,000 or give a fruit to the scientist guy in the raid area. Not all fruits were able to be awakened at the time, and Buddha was not able to be awakened yet. It's time to talk about why Buddha is one of the most hated fruits in PvP, the spamming. Since most people only use Buddha for its transformation and the fact that it makes you tankier and increase your attack reach, Buddha users would just chase their enemies, spam their fighting style and most likely win. People hated this since it was lazy and overpowered to do, often making fun of people who did this. The ghoul race and mask made this even worse. Now it was even more annoying to fight an Bob-omb spammer since if it gets hit, all it takes is a couple of hits and it heals back a majority of its health. These users still exist today but a bit less common because of later, more overpowered fruits. Even though there were many more good synergies with Buddha, this was the most popular option for the majority of Buddha's lifespan. Next year on the 20th of March 2021, Buddha got some bug fixes and a small buff but still no awakening. Buddha got an awakening in the next update. Update 15. The third C update. The biggest update since the New World update. Adding another new C, many new fruits, weapons, accessories, islands and, of course, Buddha got an awakening. Like all fruit awakenings, awakening Buddha's moves made your attacks better, so let's see its opposite awakened. First, a new move was actually added called Retribution Dash. Costing 2000 fragments, you dash forward at a fast speed. If an enemy or player gets hit with the dash, they will hold the enemy up and slam them into the ground. You have to be transformed to use all of these moves, even the awakened version. Shift, the awakened version of transform costing 500 fragments. You transform into a bigger Buddha which increases damage reduction, hitbox, attack reach, air jump height and does some damage during transformation. An aura forms around the giant Buddha having Japanese and Chinese symbols. These symbols stand for grass, body, heart, soul, fire, water, wind and stone. There are also some more outer symbols in the aura but there's so many, here's a screenshot. You can also walk on water since you're so big. Heavenly Impact costs 3000 fragments and is the awakened version of Impact. It's basically Impact but faster, different visuals and breaks instinct. In fact, all awakened moves break instinct. Light of Annihilation is the awakened version of Buddha Leap and costs 4000 fragments. It is completely different from the unawakened version, making a big explosion and shoots a light beam doing pretty good damage. Twilight of the Gods is the final awakened move, costing 5000 fragments in the awakened counterpart of Buddha Explosion. You slowly rise as you fire many light beams around you and ends with a light column. It does massive damage and stuns. Although all the moves have been awakened, most players still use the shift move since it's much stronger and people only use Buddha to easily grind and win fights against other players. Twilight of the Gods is used sometimes for its damage and stun and all the moves break instinct but most will still use shift for reasons said before. Update 17. One of the biggest updates and split into 3.5 parts. Buddha did get some changes in update 17.3 but not too many things happened to it. Update 18. The Race V4 update. It added Race V4. It got a nerf where it would deal a 27.5% decreased M1 damage, probably to make M1 spamming less useful. Swords were unaffected so people could still use that to spam. However, Buddha was pretty useful in the V4 fighting room. A month later on the 25th of February 2023, the Valentine's event released with a new fruit and some changes. All of Buddha's awakened moves actually got a buff. Update 20, the most hyped update yet. Although a bit underwhelming, it still added a lot of content. Update 20, reworking all the swords also meant that swords were more useful with Buddha. The fruits model also changed, having a more cartoony look. RIP Kilo. And here we are. Update 23 released Christmas last year. And that's the reason Buddha is always popular in almost all situations. Now I haven't told everything about this fruit so let's go through some fun facts, glitches and more now. Most people know this already but you can perform a sword hitbox glitch. Use shift, turn off. Shift and immediately equip your sword and you will have a giant sword with the same hitbox you have with the transformation. If it doesn't work, try again. It also works with fighting styles. V1 Buddha moves can be used in V2 form, but V2 moves cannot be used in V1 form, which is interesting. There's a glitch you can do with Buddha that I actually did a video on. Enter a raid and shift, as you're about to teleport to the raid islands. Activate Twilight of the Gods and this will happen. Buddha and Control are the only fruits that buff weapons. There is a glitch where you could transform into a small Buddha. Buddha hasn't gotten the balance changed in a while, so I hope update 24 changes that. Next update will probably not be different, but they will most likely rebalance and rework many fruits. That should have a change, and looking at the leaks so far, it looks like they're changing a lot of stuff. We've been waiting 11 months for a new update and we don't even have a teaser trailer. Starting to think it'll never release. And that's mostly everything about Buddha. Thanks for watching till the end. This is the first time I'm making these type of videos, and I've actually been planning to make a video like this in March or May, and now it's November. New video next week.